Well, hello everyone and welcome to our Veritas Prep presentation on is it true that I should never apply in round 3? So we're going to have a little discussion here about applying in round 2 versus round 3. My name is Travis Morgan and I am our Director of Admissions Consulting. To give you just a little bit of background on me, there I am down in the corner. I am a GMAT instructor myself, as well as a head consultant for Veritas Prep before I became the Director of Admissions Consulting. So I'm very familiar with the process of applying, all the way from studying for that GMAT all the way through hitting submit on your applications and waiting for the response and all of that. I myself went to Kellogg, graduated in '09. I was a member of the admissions committee as a student there. I was also elected to the career management team as a student and also served on the Diversity and Inclusion Council. So from my perspective, having been at Kellogg on the inside and seeing these things from these various committees and whatnot, I also have a lot of experience there and understand the whole process of applying and the nerve-wracking nature of it and whatnot, and I'm happy to help out today. So yeah, our topic, as you know, is talking about round 2 and round 3 and these trying to dispel some of these myths that you may see on the web and but also confirm some things that you may have seen. So enough about me, let's get going. Here's some of the things that I've seen at both questions that are posed to me and things that I've seen on the web as well. A round 3 application is just a donation to the school. Like there's no chance of you getting in, so you're just donating that $250 to $300 application fee to the school, and you will never see it again. So I can get feedback for next year when I really want to apply. There's no downside, so why not apply in round 3? If I don't get in, I'll just reapply. Never apply in round 3 because you'll be seen as a lazy applicant who didn't get their act together for rounds 1 or 2. And a statement that you often see on these schools' websites is applicants are accepted in all rounds. And I'll tell you right now, there's a little bit of truth and a little bit of perhaps not the full truth to each of these statements. So let's go through this workshop and I'll be able to walk you through kind of the pros and cons and some key considerations that you want to consider as you are making your application decisions. So some key considerations. The program format to which you're applying. Now some of the advice that you'll see on the web may be for a particular type of program, like a full-time program versus a part-time program or something like this. And it's different depending on what the program format is, so we'll talk about that. Also, the program ranking. Are you applying to a top 20 school or not applying to a top 20 school, something below the top 20? Now, is this an arbitrary cutoff that I've given, top 20? Yes. Is it, if I'm applying to rank 21 versus 20, is that going to make a huge difference? No, but we will talk about that in greater detail. Also, your program's location. So are you applying to US-based programs or those programs outside of the United States? There's a big difference here. And also your profile. Every applicant is unique, every applicant is different, and you may be facing a different set of circumstances than someone else who may be making a decision on whether they should hurry up, rush, and get an application in by round 2, or should they wait and apply in round 3. So let's take a look. Let me just knock out some recommendations here for some of these considerations that are very much easier. So if you're looking at program format and you're looking at a part-time program or an EMBA program, to be perfectly honest with you, round 3 is fine. These programs tend to have not as many applicants as their full-time counterparts, and the applicants tend to apply later in the process. And so they get many, many qualified applicants in round 3. And so, yeah, round 3 is fine. That said, we always recommend at Veritas Prep that, as long as you have a solid, well-crafted, well-researched application, that you should apply earlier rather than later, and there are very few instances in which you would want to wait intentionally to apply in round 3. So if you're listening to our session together today and you have time to get that application in, you might as well get it in round 2 versus waiting. Now, some of these programs, part-time and EMBA, really don't have rounds at all. They just have a rolling admission season. And it's always to your advantage to apply earlier rather than later because they will be filling up spots as they go through. However, don't when you see, oh, it's a rolling admission, I should get my application in right now. Like, don't rush needlessly nor wait needlessly, all right? So you want to make sure that you're getting in the best application you can. Now, a little side note here. What about other non-traditional programs? So, I'm talking about pretty much anything that is just not your traditional, standard, 2-year full-time MBA program. Say, what about these other non-traditional ones? Like, for example, I'm a college senior and I'm applying to Harvard Business School's 2+2 program. Similar program at Yale Silver Scholars. There's a more advanced career program called Sloan Scholars that's at MIT Sloan and at Stanford and at London Business School. Duke has a cross-continent program. All these non-traditional programs. What about these? So generally speaking, now I get very nervous when people watch these things and they say, oh, well, Travis told me this, so I'm going to apply it in every possible extreme circumstance. Be very careful of this, but generally speaking, later deadlines are almost always fine. And usually the website will actually give you a hint about this, where they specifically tell you, college seniors applying to HBS 2+2 may apply in any round and will be given equal consideration or something like this, right? So they will be very explicit about the fact that it's okay to apply in later deadlines rather than something more broad like a statement like applicants are admitted in every round. Okay, that's fine, but how many? How much? Unless they're giving you specific guidance on here, that yes, they'll be given equal consideration in each round, you should be a little bit hesitant there. So far we've just said, okay, if you're applying to non-traditional programs like a part-time program, an EMBA program, or some of these other one-off programs, applying a little bit later is okay. Now, is it preferable to applying earlier? No. If you can get your application in earlier and feel very confident about it, and we'll talk about this later in our workshop, then apply earlier. But if things come up and you have difficulty with some element of the application or something, and you need to wait to a later deadline, for these circumstances, later is okay. All right, let's go on to our next one. What about program ranking? Again, generally speaking, if you're applying to schools outside of the top 10 to 15, round 3 is actually fine. That the schools are looking for more strong applicants, and they'll take them whenever they can get them, to be perfectly honest with you. Schools are always looking for strong applicants. So if you're a strong applicant to these programs outside the top 15 to 20, round 3 may be okay for you. Now, they want to make sure that you're actually going to go to their program, so you may have to put some things in your application that are strong signals that you definitely want to go, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. However, just as a rule of thumb, the lower the ranking, the later the school will admit a significant number of candidates. For example, Veritas Prep is based in the Los Angeles area, and so we have 2 very strong programs of UCLA and USC. Now, USC falls outside of this top 15 to 20 just barely, and so I would probably recommend that people apply still in rounds 1 and 2 because it's really close to this kind of top 20 ranking. But will they potentially admit a few more people in round 3 than higher ranked schools such as a Harvard or a Stanford? Yes. However, if you look even beyond that here in the LA area, we have other programs such as Pepperdine University here in Malibu, We also have Loyola Marymount. We also have UC Irvine down in Orange County and things. And these schools tend to admit people basically right up until the day school starts. So if you're applying to a program, I think sometimes on GMAT Club and these other forums that we tend to focus exclusively on top-ranked schools, but not everyone is in that same category. So if you're not in that category, you're really looking at schools beyond the top 15, beyond the top 20, beyond the top 30. Then you're going to have a lot more flexibility in when you can apply. And again, as you start inching toward that top 20 and start inching toward that top 15, round 3 is going to get more and more difficult to get into. So that's also just something. Now, we will have continued discussion on when round 3 makes sense for people and when it may not. But I just want to throw these things out there for your knowledge. U.S. versus international. International programs admit candidates across all their rounds. And so really, this is one that's probably the most distinct in that there really is no disadvantage to applying in round 3 to programs outside of the U.S. They definitely look at candidates applying in all 3 rounds, and we have not seen distinct disadvantages with our clients or with the application pool in general in applying in a later round to an international program. This includes very highly ranked programs such as INSEAD, such as ESADE and IE and some of these in Spain, LBS. But again, if you have the opportunity to apply in an earlier round and you can pull together a strong application, it will only be to your advantage to apply in an earlier round, assuming that all the pieces are in place. If you're applying to international, these very sort of strict, you should only apply in rounds 1 or 2 that you may see in some U.S.-based schools is just not the case when you're applying international. So that's also something to note. So we've knocked these out pretty quickly. But you say, well, okay, what if I'm applying to a full-time program at a top-tier school in the U.S.? This tends to be our population here on GMAT Club. So let's take a look and say, well, what if this is my situation? Now, should I never apply to a round 3? Or what am I looking at? Well, let's take a look at some words from admissions. So we took a look at a word off the street, but what about from admissions itself? Let's take a look at this. We definitely advise people to avoid the 3rd round if possible, because space can become an issue by the time the 3rd round rolls around. That's from Bruce Delmonico at Yale School of Management. That's where our co-founders at Veritas Prep started the company, at Yale School of Management. What about this next one? So this was, D. Leopold responding to whether HBS should just get rid of round 3. There are schools actually that have just gotten rid of round 3 altogether, and they only have 2 rounds of admissions because they just didn't find that this was valuable. Here's what D. Leopold said. She said, we always see enough interesting round 3 applicants to want to do it again. And so they have not gotten rid of round 3. That's interesting, right? Because HBS gets more applicants than any other school of the top tier schools in the U.S. And they get far more applications than any other school. And yet they continue to have round 3 because they continue to admit people from round 3. Interesting. So we're getting some split some split advice here. And then if we look, for example, at the Stanford GSB website, it says, while we admit outstanding individuals in all 3 rounds, there are some advantages to applying in either the 1st or 2nd round. And to be perfectly honest with you, HBS's website says pretty much the same thing. If you're trying to decide, all things being equal, which round to apply in rounds 1 or 2. Don't wait until round 3. And honestly, that's good advice. So let's take a look at some statistics. As I mentioned, I'm an alum from the Kellogg School of Management, and these are estimates, but they're pretty close. This is the number of applicants who are applying to Kellogg. Note that about a third of applicants apply in the first round, and then you have about just under 60%, but usually about 55 to 60% apply in round two, by far the largest number of applications that they receive, and only 7% of applications are received in round three. So you might think to yourself, oh wow, well I'm actually going to be applying in actually the smallest round, so I should be able to stand out, and maybe it's a better opportunity for me to wait and apply in round three. Don't be fooled, okay? Don't be fooled by this. Let's take a look at a few insider's tips. Round three applicants may be considered along with waitlisted candidates from rounds 1 and 2. So these were candidates who they really thought have a very good chance of being admitted. If you're waitlisted in rounds 1 or 2, this is not that horrible of a sign. You're like, oh no, I wasn't accepted. I was just waitlisted. Listen, only qualified candidates are waitlisted in these rounds. So it's not this horrible, horrible thing that you were waitlisted. In fact, at Kellogg, I know that we look at candidates from the wait list of rounds 1 and 2 before we even look at round 3. So, so be careful about saying, oh, well, round 3 has this tiny number of people who apply, so I'm going to be able to stand out even more. It's just not true. You'll be compared against every other applicant who has already applied in rounds 1 and 2, particularly compared against these waitlisted folks who are still in consideration. Also, very few candidates are selected from round 3. Admissions rates may be only 1 to 2%. So even though 7% of applications came in, even among them, you might only have, depending on yield, right, depending on how many people who were admitted in rounds 1 and 2 actually decide to go to the school. That's what they call yield. They may admit very few applicants from round 3, sometimes just in the single digits. I mean, our consultants here at Veritas have mentioned that, for example, some years at Wharton, they may only admit 5 people. 5 total people, not 5%, 5 people from round 3. Also, from my experience at Kellogg, I know that there's been times when we've admitted 7 people from round 3 getting in. So be very careful, right? Round 3 is a very difficult round to be admitted in. Now, are these extreme numbers that I'm giving you? Yes. Are there years when they admit more than just single digits of people from round 3? Yes, right? But I just want to show you that there's a lot of things that are out of your control when you apply in round 3 to these US-based top-tier full-time programs. One thing to note, another insider's tip here on round 3, because they really are just a few last spots that are available to people, to admits. They use round 3 to balance out the class. Now, what does this mean? This means that if they'd say, oh, we really would like a couple more people from this undergraduate program, right? That typically we have more people from from one undergraduate program, and we don't have as many people this year. Maybe we want to round it out that way. But more often, it's looking at other kinds of demographics of the class, right? And saying, oh, are we really low on women this year? And we happen to have some really strong female applicants in round 3. Hey, let's try to admit a few more female applicants to give our class more diversity. Now, should you look at this in a really sort of cynical way, of saying, oh gosh, well, they're just sort of pumping up their stats or their quotas? I don't look at it that way at all, just so you know. Having been a member of the Diversity and Inclusion Council at Kellogg, I look at it as the admissions committee is legitimately wanting to get a good mix of people with various backgrounds and various perspectives into every single classroom, so that when you get in the classroom, you're going to have a dynamic discussion from people who are not all just the exact same background, who went to the same undergraduate program or very similar programs, who all came from very similar backgrounds of investment banking or management consulting or things like this, but instead have a different perspective, and they can really contribute in a different way to the class. So I do think it's legitimate here. Now, this could also be simply things like, oh, we don't have as many people from Eastern Europe as as we have in the past, and we have some really strong round 3 applicants from Eastern Europe. So we'll pull that. You don't know what the class makeup is going to look like, and what they're going to be short on. So you don't really know what your chances are of getting in round 3. It's a complete crapshoot. Even if you're a stellar, outstanding, just knock their socks off applicant, it's possible that you could be denied in round 3 just simply because they don't have room, right? So yes, applicants are admitted, but they tend to have very unique backgrounds coming from round 3, so that you're providing some sort of new and unique contribution to the class, something that they don't already have. And so the people who tend to be admitted tend to have very unique backgrounds. Now, does this mean that if I come from management consulting, which many people do, that there's absolutely no chance of getting in round 3? I'm not saying that. In fact, we have an HBS consultant on our staff who was a management consultant, and she applied in round 3 and she got in. So, and she didn't have this wildly different background. She didn't have, anything that really, really stood out, but she was very strong applicant, had very strong recommendations, and they looked at her and said, yeah, we would like her to be a part of this class. So, is it an absolute, like, you just absolutely cannot get in round 3? No, of course we're not going to say that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a round 3. However, the chances of getting in are significantly lower than in rounds 1 and 2. And, people who have something unique to contribute that may not be offered by other members of the class have a distinct advantage. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some other considerations that you may want to make in applying to business school here. So first of all, the recommendation is, if you're applying to a top-tier, US-based full-time MBA, I just want to be very clear, generally speaking, you should aim to apply in round 2, unless you have legitimate, extenuating circumstances, and we will get into that in just a second. So, yeah, your goal really should be to apply to round 2, and we'll even look around some of these other circumstances, say, you know what, try to get it in by round 2 anyway, okay? That there's such an advantage on top-tier, US-based, full-time MBA programs, round 2 versus 3, that you really should be aiming at round 2. So that's the overall, general speaking, what we recommend. Okay, now, some other key considerations here. Your GMAT score is the #1 most important element of your application. Why do I bring this up? Because if you don't have the GMAT score that's going to get you into the program that you want to go to, then there's really no sense in applying in round 2. Like if you're not qualified, right? If you are on the way bottom end of the range of these GMAT scores, then rushing to get your application in by round 2 is not going to do you any good anyway, because you're not going to be admitted. And I hate to give it to you that straight, but it's true. Now we see all this stuff online about, how to get into, I got into, Stanford with only a 580, and you can too. Those are very rare. They're very rare. And so, even if you have low 600s or mid 600s, if you're aiming at top tier schools, this is a very difficult thing to do. Let me point out something. So ask yourself, do you have a competitive score for your target schools? Look at the averages. Median scores for these schools. Look at the far right-hand side of this. Stanford has a median score of a 740 last year. 740, meaning you roughly split it in half, and half of the admitted students had a 740 or above, and half had below. So if you're sitting at mid 600s and applying to Stanford, you have really got to knock their socks off. I mean, you've got to make the argument that they need to admit you over all these other qualified applicants, and that there's a reason for them to bring you in and kind of bring their average down. Okay, Harvard is sitting at about a 730, or a little bit below, 725 or so. Wharton in the same range, but right in the right around a 720 these days, 718 I think it is. UCLA, which a lot of people say, oh, I'll apply to Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton, and then I'll apply to a backup school like UCLA. UCLA is not just a backup school. Its average is right in about the 714 mark, for average GMAT scores, and even a school that you may not even be on your radar, right? That is not even in the top 20, top 25 even. Well down below in the rankings, UC Davis is sitting at just above a 690 average, right? So be aware, yes, can you have a score below average and get in? Of course, half the people have a score below average and they get in. But how much below average? For example, at Kellogg, whose average is right in the same range of UCLA and Wharton, right in the, above a 710, kind of 715, 720 range. However, 75% of admits to Kellogg have a 700 or above. 75% have a 700 or above. That's a very different ball game than what we were talking about 5 years ago. So just be aware, if you are sort of hard charging toward round 2, and you do not have a GMAT score that's going to qualify you, is it worth going through all of this and your recommenders submitting their recommendations and you crafting these essays and just honing them one word at a time when your chances of admission may be very, very low? Okay, that's just a consideration that you need to make. And some people say, yes, I know my chances are very low, but I want to hit it anyway. Fine, we're not going to stop you from that, but just be aware of this. And remember that everyone who has a below average GMAT score, they have to have other reasons, particularly if you're well below average. If you're kind of in this bottom 25th percentile. There's a reason why they're admitting those people rather than somebody with a higher score. And so, they get tons of applicants, many more qualified applicants than they have room in their class. And so the reason that they choose these people with lower scores is that they provide other elements of their application that just wow the admissions committee, and they say, oh my gosh, we must have this person in our program, right? And so they're willing to admit them above people with higher scores. So are you planning to retake the GMAT? Let's think about this. Maybe we don't have the score now, but we're planning on retaking the GMAT here in the next month or something. So if you believe you can improve your score with another, month or so of study, listen, plan to apply in round 2. Get it in, get the higher score, and apply in round 2. However, you're going to be doing a lot of stuff at the same time because these applications are difficult. Remember that applying to business school is more than just writing essays. And so people who, say, okay, I don't have the score now that I'm looking for, but I can take the GMAT, retake it. Of course, I'm going to get this incredible score of like a 750, and then I can focus on my essays, and I'll still have like a week or two left before the deadlines. Be careful, because this can be a huge mistake as you are going toward these applications. So unlike other professional graduate programs, business schools expect you to make a clear case for why their specific program is right for you, making a very clear connection between yourself and the program. And the number one thing that we see at Veritas Prep of people, particularly if you're rushing right at the last minute here, to try to get in on round 2 versus round 3, is having generic applications. And let me tell you, the admissions committee will see right through it. So, as you're making this decision on round 2 versus round 3, if this means that you're going to have generic applications that could be written for any school and pretty much any candidate, then that is not going to be to your advantage. You really need to block out time now to prepare yourself properly to apply and have a successful application. I mean, there's no sense in rushing for round 2 if we all know you're just going to get denied? So what do you need to do in order to prepare properly, right? They expect deep research on the school and understand how it differs from other schools, okay? So, and this can be difficult. You look at these schools' websites and they all pretty much say the same thing. Like, shoot me an email if you find any MBA website that does not say something about leadership potential and having the next generation of leaders, uh, teamwork, and how they have a collaborative environment and that everyone gets along and that there's this great environment that emphasizes teamwork, and that they're looking for innovation and the next generation of ideas and whatnot. If you find any MBA website that that does not include these three things, I will be shocked. Right? They all sound exactly the same. However, the schools themselves differ significantly, and if you don't recognize that and rush for a round 2 deadline, then you may be putting yourself at a disadvantage, and this is what I'm trying to avoid. So how do we conduct due diligence, right? Our proper due diligence. Now, if you're from consulting, banking, finance industry, you understand this term of due diligence. It's the research that you do ahead of a deal. But have you done all the research that you need to do to really understand the pros and cons of things, right? So have you done your due diligence on the schools to which you're applying to? And you think, yeah. I've checked out their websites. I've checked out the rankings. And I know which schools I want to apply to. That's just the start. Okay? So, yes, can you go to school websites and rankings to get started? Of course. I actually like looking at the Business Week rankings. Why? Because they actually offer a lot more information than just the rankings. And you can get a lot of other quick stats about GMAT, GPA, years of work experience, all of these sorts of things on Business Week. Also, you want to be looking for the school's specialties, right? What are the special programs that they have if you're looking for something, if you're looking for real estate development, if you're looking for media management, if you're looking for these niche specialties, then you want to make sure that the school has the specialties for you. Even if you're looking for broad specialties, like you want to go into finance, you want to be a career switcher and move into investment banking. Do they have a strong program in finance, right? Do they have the companies recruiting there that you're looking for? Marketing would be the same way, brand management, these sorts of things. But then dive deeper, right? Reach out to your personal network. Find current students at the schools. Find recent alums. Call them up and talk to them about their experience. Ask their advice on your applications, right? MBAs love to give advice. So if you just shoot them a quick email and say, hey, do you have 10 to 15 minutes that we could speak by phone, so that I could get your advice on, applying to Kellogg, on applying to Wharton, on applying to HBS. I noticed that we went to the same undergrad and all of this, and I would love to just, pick your brain for just a moment or two. And MBAs love to give advice. So one way to tap into your personal network, of course, is social media, your Facebook friends, your LinkedIn folks, finding people who go to the schools, and using those connections to say, yeah, we have this in common. Now, do you want to talk to me? The other thing you can do is your undergraduate alumni database. So if you went to an undergraduate, particularly if you went to a large undergraduate program, you can tap into that alumni database to find out who went to your target schools or who is currently going to your target schools, and reach out to them and say, hey, we both went to Duke undergrad or wherever you went, and University of Michigan or whatnot, and say, hey, I noticed that you're also an alum, and you're going to the school that I really want to apply to. Can I get your advice on what you did to succeed? Something like this. Also, reaching out to student club leaders. Often on the school's website, they have posted right on the website who the leaders are for these various clubs. And you want to find the clubs that you are interested in, right? And that align with your background and or goals. And you can reach out to them and do the same thing and say, hey, I have this background in private equity. I noticed that you're the private equity club. president or secretary or whatever, and I would love to pick your brain for just 10 or 15 minutes on my application to the school and get your advice. So there we go. Also, you can visit campus, you can attend info sessions, and if you do these things, talk to everyone you can. Talk to your fellow people who are on the campus tour with you. Talk to as many students as you can, and really get a feel for the culture of the school. Now, why am I talking about all this? Because you want to incorporate all this research that you do into your essays. So if they have a why MBA or a why Kellogg essay, which many of them do, this is perfect place to incorporate this and say, oh yes, when I was speaking with an alum from from my same undergraduate, I was most impressed with the fact that Kellogg has blah 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 blah. And you can speak very specifically about the program, and you can even speak about how you found out about these things. Oh, as I was speaking with these alums and this sort of thing, I was most impressed with this. Incorporate it right into your essays. But so do you see how this takes time, though? How you need to have some time to reach out to these folks, to gain their insights on the culture of the school, on specific programs that you may want to be interested in, and then incorporate that into your essays. So just be aware of that. The schools, they just want to be loved, so show it. How do you show it? With your research in your essays. Okay? So now, so if you've already conducted your due diligence and you have enough time to incorporate this school-specific information in your application, then you definitely want to apply in round 2, right? This is a no-brainer. Like if you've done this work, round 2. However, remember that you will also need 2 to 3 recommenders for each school to which you apply. Oh, by the way, I can't remember if this slide is in here, but even if you haven't done this, you want to make sure that you conduct even a little bit of due diligence and you maybe reach out to just 1 or 2 alums and apply in round 2 anyway. All right. So, yeah, your recommenders. So you need 2 to 3 recommenders for each school to which you apply. All right. Now, most schools will not accept just a blanket letter of recommendation that they change the name of the school at the top and then they're done. Instead, every single school will ask your recommender to fill out a different online form. All right? Then they will have to rate you on all these things like your skills, your teamwork, innovation, all of these areas, and they'll give you a rating separately for each school that you're applying to. Then they will answer maybe like 4 or 5, sometimes 3 or 4 brief essay questions, if you will. But they're just quick, maybe like 200 words or something like this. Questions about you and your relationship to them. But each of these schools is going to ask for something different, right? So they're all going to ask for a recommendation from your current supervisor. They're going to ask slightly different questions. And then your recommender must fill out a separate online form for each school. And this can be a ton of work for them if you're applying to several schools. Do you see how this could become a problem? So my recommendation is contact your recommenders now and leave them plenty of time ahead of round 2 deadlines. You don't want to rush them. So even if you end up applying to, say, some of your backup schools or something like this in round 3, your recommendations will still be good to go. But you want to offer yourself the flexibility of being able to squeeze in these applications in round 2 if you can. So my recommendation is give your recommenders as much time as possible. Don't rush them because, first of all, they don't want to have to do like 5 recommendations in 2 days and then they're going to hate you. You don't want your recommender to hate you by the time they get to that 5th recommendation. So be aware of that, okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about when round 3 does make sense. And we've already talked about some of these, right? You're not applying to that traditional 2-year full-time MBA program. Instead, you're part-time, EMBA, an online program, and some of the other non-traditionals that we talked about. By the way, some programs, Kellogg included, have a 1-year full-time MBA program. That's really the same as a traditional full-time MBA program. All the rules apply. So you want to aim for round 2 generally, except, as we're going to discuss here in just a moment. You're applying, right, to full-time program outside of top 20 rankings, as we mentioned. Here's another one. You have legitimate extenuating circumstances that prevented you from applying in rounds 1 or 2. And I put this picture here because we have some members of the military, particularly if you are deployed, and where applying in rounds 1 or 2 may be incredibly difficult. But you get back and you're able to get your round 3 application in because you were literally out of the country serving our country and weren't able to apply in rounds 1 or 2. The schools will completely understand this. Okay, they will. Now, do some of the other logistical things still apply, like there's fewer spots and things like this? Yes. However, you will not be put at a disadvantage by having a legitimate extenuating circumstance that prevented you from applying in rounds 1 or 2, military being a very common one. All right. Now, what about this? You intentionally waited because of an improved situation, and you're telling me, Trav, you're telling me not to intentionally wait. Well, let me talk to you about something. If you had a score that was just not going to be a qualifying score for the school, you were in low to mid 600s, and you took the retook the GMAT. And you got your score after the round 2 deadlines, but now it's in like 700 plus. Maybe it's even higher than 720 plus, something like this. Then that's a whole new ball game. And so if you have like a 620 right now and you're thinking about applying to these top tier schools, you have a very low chance. It may be better for you to just retake the GMAT so that you are qualified to then apply to these schools. However, this case is not very common, just so you know, okay, that you intentionally wait, because you had an improved situation, okay. Generally speaking, you want your scores to be good for round 2 and apply in round 2. One other just little note about when round 3 may make sense is your stats. Your GMAT and your GPA are well above average for the program. Essentially, this was kind of either a backup program, kind of backup school for you, or you decided late and it's a local school, right? You don't have to move and all this stuff, and you're like, no, this is the school that I want to go to. I know that I could probably apply to higher ranked programs because my stats are well above average, but this is the program that I want to go to. It's the thing that fits my needs. Great. And even if you don't realize that until round 3, apply anyway, because they're always going to be looking for strong applicants. So if your stats are well above average for the program, round 3 makes sense. You have a very unique profile, and we'll talk about this in a little more detail, but as we mentioned, right, they use round 3 to kind of round out their applicants. They round out their class profile. And so if you have a really interesting, really unique profile, round 3 may still make sense for you, right? So now, is it still preferable for you to apply in round 2 if you can? Yes, but if there are some circumstances in which you cannot apply in round 2, like you don't have your GMAT done, or you have other profile issues that you really, you're not going to be able to get together any sort of an application that makes any sense at all, but you have a very unique profile, yeah, round 3 may make some sense. Again, I don't want to emphasize too much because you still have a chance to apply in round 2. But yeah, if you have a very unique profile, why do I put our football player here is that we've had people like, from professional sports, people, with these very unusual profiles and things have great success in round 3. Also if you are a very successful, entrepreneur, something like this, that you'd bring a very different background, then that might be of interest as well. Okay. So, these very unique profiled candidates. And then lastly, so you've already made connections with the school. What does that mean? You've gone to the info sessions. You have a relationship with, say an associate director of admissions or director of admissions at one of these schools. They know your application's coming, and there's just something that's holding it up, like you're going to retake the GMAT. And, and you're going to submit it with a higher GMAT score, something like this. But they already know you. They already like you. They've even said, I've had some applicants, particularly at lower ranked schools, where the, the admissions folks say, hey, if you can get your score above X score, we would love to have you, right? So you pretty much already know, like, oh, I'm going to get in as long as I can hit these criteria or whatever. Then of course applying in a later round may make sense for you, okay? So let's just do a very quick, we're wrapping up here, but I want to do a very quick kind of pros and cons, for rounds 2 versus 3 when you are applying to US-based schools, top-tier full-time programs. So round 2 has actually a ton of pros, tons. I've just listed, kind of some of the biggies. It is the largest application round, and so they will be holding many spots open, right? I mean, they know that, the rough breakdown of applicants in rounds 1, 2, and 3, and so if you can get in round 2, there's still plenty of spots available. There's much higher admissions rates in round 2 than in round 3. Now, does that mean that, oh, I'm going to be a shoo-in? No, I mean, these much higher, like a 10% admission rate instead of a 1% admission rate, right? Or a 18 or 20% admission rate instead of a 2 or 3% admission rate, right? That doesn't mean that you're a shoo-in in round 2. You still have to be a knock them down, stand out, just great candidate, but you have much higher chance in round 2. You also have a major advantage when it comes to scholarships and housing. By the time they get to round 3, there's typically no scholarships available, and often on-campus housing is already gone. So just be aware of that as well. Some other things too, by the way, is that by round 3, they may not be, most schools actually don't have an admitted students weekend for round 3 applicants. So if you're trying to kind of compare schools and see who your fellow classmates would be and this sort of thing, you don't have that opportunity in round 2. So just be aware of that. Cons, now, you may not have the opportunity to retake the GMAT. And if your GMAT score is going to keep you out of the school altogether, then that's a major con of round 2. If you're just not going to get in, then that's a problem. Also, these things like you have less time to conduct due diligence, less time to hone your essays, and that too many applications may put your recommenders in a pinch. If you still have a month or 2 out before the deadlines, my recommendation is to just try to do these things, but you're going to have to do them pretty quickly. But don't submit sloppy applications. Don't submit applications with mistakes in them, with grammatical mistakes. Even, I tell you, when you rush these applications, we see it every year that you put in an application with the wrong name of the school, and you're applying to Stanford, and one of these places, it still says Harvard somewhere. Wow. You just kissed your whole application goodbye, right? So don't submit sloppy applications in round 2. Make sure that they're crisp, that they're good, that they're solid, and you need to take the time to do that, okay? So that could be a con, is if you have sloppier applications. That could be a huge con. It could doom your whole application if you make these silly mistakes. So just be aware of that. I'm not saying don't apply in round 2. I'm just saying be hyper aware of this if you're rushing toward round 2. Okay, round 3, pros. Well, now it's sort of just the opposite. Yeah, you do have the opportunity to take the GMAT potentially. You have more time to craft your story and avoid sloppy applications. You may have the ability to highlight, the upcoming professional, personal, or academic achievements. Like if you know that you're going to get a humongous promotion, then that could be a pro. However, it's not enough of a pro, in my opinion, to dramatically wait until round 3. Instead, I would say apply in round 2, and then if something changes about your status, you can actually just send them an email and update them. About, just so you know, I just got this big promotion at work, and I'm now, the director of whatever division or something like this. That you can submit later on after the round 2 deadlines and still be fine. Cons. Huge cons in round 3. Very low admission rate. The admissions committee, we call this the ADCOM, the admissions committee will question why you applied so late. Listen, we got over 90% of our applications in the first 2 rounds. Why couldn't you apply in the first 2 rounds? You need to use your optional essay if you apply in round 3 and explain why you're applying in round 3. If you just sort of leave it out there like, oh, I'm just going to submit this application, nobody in the admissions office knows me, no one knows my circumstances, and I'm just going to submit it, they will look skeptically on this. They will want to know why you're applying in round 3. So this is a big con, right? Why are you applying so late? If you sort of know how business school works and you're sort of in the know, you'll know you need to apply in rounds 1 and 2 unless you have these extenuating circumstances. So you need to explain them. Okay? And then even if they wanted to admit you, there may not be enough spots available. So you may be a standout candidate, but there just might not be spots available for you, right? And so then you may want to reapply the following year anyway. So what did we just get out of all of that? Honestly, if you're applying to US-based top-tier MBA programs, it is almost always to your advantage to apply in round 2. The only caveat is don't be sloppy. It still needs to be tight. You're going to be held up against the same standards as everyone else applying in round 2 who may have been taking months and months and months to research the schools and to talk to alums, to talk to current students, and to do their real due diligence and show how they are a fantastic fit for that program, and you'll be held up to that same standard. There are a few exceptions where round 3 may make sense, as we mentioned, with part-time programs, with EMBA, with international programs, with these other things, yet perfectly fine. There may be some other exceptions, like if you have extenuating circumstances, or that you're just a very, very unique candidate and you feel that you can really stand out, and you just didn't have the opportunity to apply in round 2, then go ahead and give round 3 a shot, right? But just be aware that most schools will not give you feedback, even if you're applying in round 3. So don't do it intentionally if you're not planning on attending in the fall, like just as a trial run or something like this. That is not to your advantage in any way. Okay, I just want to mention too, if you have very specific questions, of course I'm going to be here right now for the Q&A and I'm happy to answer them. But if you're really pushing for these round 2 applications, we have resources that can give you a sharp, strong application that you may, at this point with your available resources may be very difficult to do on your own. And we do have comprehensive school packages where you pay by school, and you'll be paired up with a head consultant who has top-tier admissions experience, and you'll have a school specialist for every one of your target schools. And so they'll be able to cover things like school selection, your resume, prepping your recommenders, your essay brainstorming, editing, and interview prep through that whole process. And your school specialist will really be able to help you target your applications to the individual schools. So this may speed up your due diligence process significantly. If you're just looking for little bits of help, we have hourly packages as well. And if you already have kind of everything done, but you would just like someone to take a look at it and give you a couple of rounds of feedback, we have just straight essay and resume editing services where they won't know your background information or anything like this, but they'll be able to look at your essay and give you 2 rounds of edits on that. And if you're just looking to kind of pump up your due diligence, we also have essential guides on our most popular schools that will help you speed up that due diligence process significantly and be able to target individual programs and individual cultural things and things within those schools much more easily than if you're just trying to start from scratch with your due diligence process. So these are all things that may be helpful to you as you're trying to hit round 2 deadlines. Now, it's time for Q&A. I will be here and happy to help you out with the Q&A. Sorry that the slide got a little bit adjusted, but if you have additional questions and want to talk about your candidacy, we are more than happy to talk with you. And my apologies for the slide, but the number is 1-800-925-7737. and then the email address is info@veritasprep.com, and we'll be more than happy to help you out with that. But for now, let's just go into the chat session, and I will be more than happy to answer your individual questions about applying in round 1, in round 2 or round 3. Thanks, everybody.